Are you excited about the impending release of the Canon EOS R1? Well, me too. And with Canon pretty much ending now the development of flagship DSLRs, all the focus and attention now is on the R1. So when's it going to be out? How much will it cost? And just what is it going to deliver by way of functionality? Like all photographers, I love any talk about the tech and the functionality of new cameras. And as a staunch Canon fan, as that DSLR range comes to an end as far as that flagship 1DXs are concerned, the ever-changing, ever-developing technology that you find within the mirrorless cameras is really exciting. And I cannot wait to see what the R1 is going to kind of pack, given that the R3 last year was already a pretty impressive body. So, what of the EOS R1? Well, despite it being pretty widely known, there hasn't actually been an official announcement by Canon yet confirming the R1 as being in development or any release information. Now, given that flagship DSLR, the ones I mentioned, the 1DX Mark III, when that came out in early 2020, Canon did pretty much confirm that is the last flagship DSLR that they will release. So, when the R3 was then released last year, which is a mirrorless body and was probably the best mirrorless body Canon do, really, really impressive specs. Canon are also pretty clear that that isn't a flagship model and that isn't a successor to the 1DX Mark III. So that leaves a definite hole in the Canon lineup for that top tier flagship mirrorless body. So if the R3 didn't replace the 1DX, then something has to, and that is surely where the EOS R1 comes in. As we have not yet had confirmation from Canon that the R1 is even in development, we certainly don't have any release dates. If you take a look on Google and you search for Canon R1, you're going to see a load of rumour and speculation of people guessing, or maybe leaks, as they call them, perhaps, of when the announcement will come and when the camera will be able to buy or available to buy. Those release dates that are speculated online go from anywhere in mid to late 2023, which I think is next to no chance of that happening, right up to the end of 2024. Now, for what it's worth, from my predictions, I think we're probably going to see an announcement in maybe October time next year, so a year from now. I think that is when either the R1 will be confirmed, or if they've confirmed it maybe a little bit earlier than that, I think this time next year we will definitely see a lot of the functionality of the camera kind of confirmed and expanded upon. Because obviously the R1, if indeed or when it is confirmed to be in development, they're going to have that in the hands of their select kind of ambassador range or select testers out in the field, those pro photographers who take the bodies out to test them. That will happen at some point in 2023. So a lot of the promotional material they'll need on the back, a lot of the promotional material they'll need when they announce the camera and the functionality, they'll need all the promotional content produced by some of these pros earlier in the year. So yeah, I think we're going to be looking at 2023 October time, certainly autumn here in the UK, before we get a real meaty announcement or confirmation of specifications by Canon. Now, as far as when this is going to be available to buy in the shops, looking at previous timings, I think the 1DXs have always been released early on in the year of a summer Olympic Games, so in the January, February, March kind of time of the Olympic Games. Now, in 2020, that was the case. However, obviously, shortly after the 1DX Mark III came out, COVID hit and the Summer Games dropped back here till 2021. However, that isn't going to be the case, we wouldn't have thought, in 2024. And I think we are going to see the R1 drop probably January, February time, maybe March 2024. That is only my prediction, but that is what I think anyway. I think the first quarter of that calendar year is definitely the right time to release this. If you kind of work back, and talked about them needing some testers in the field, the professional guys will be out with this next year. Then the lead up to release and teasing and talking about functionality, I just think they need that kind of runtime. It ties in with previous timescales, and so yeah, my prediction would probably be March 2024 for when we will see the R1 released. Now, in terms of the specs of the R1, again, we know nothing at this point, other than if it's going to be a flagship R1, given that the R3 will have been 2 years out by then, or 3 years out by 2024. So that was released in 21. So the R1, if that's going to be 24, you've got 3 years since the last really big, if you like, camera release, the R3. In terms of the flagship cameras, the last flagship body in the DSLR range, or 1DX Mark III, that was released back, as I said a moment ago, in early 2020. So when we talk about the specs, Canon are going to have to bridge quite a gap here to make this stand up as the flagship camera, and also to compete with some of the other camera brands that have released some really good stuff, such as likes of Sony. Now, of the specs that are talked about and leaked online so far, there is talk of an 85 megapixel sensor in the R1, which would be really, really impressive, massive numbers. And with that 85 megapixel sensor, they're going to be able to, the R1 will be able to shoot in burst mode of 20 frames per second. Great, not blisteringly quick when you compare it to like the R3, which I think was 30 frames per second. However, the rumours state that the R1, you can crop the 85 megapixels down to 21 megapixels. And if you do that, the R1 will then shoot in 40 frames per second. And that feels about right when we're talking about ballpark figures for where the tech in this camera is going to have to place to keep it in that flagship category and competing with some of the other big camera brands out there. Kind of 40 frames per second, 85 megapixels. These are the headlines that you kind of expect to see from the Canon R1. You're also going to expect to see, obviously, good low light performance. That is a given how far that the 1D Mark III had come, and also the R3. So all those kind of specs I'm not going to go into. There's quite a bit online if you do search it for people speculating on what the functionality will be. I've just pulled out a couple of big ones there because as a sports photographer using a pretty old camera at the moment, a 1D Mark IV, seeing specs that are mentioning 20 and 40 frames per second is pretty exciting. But yeah, check out the rest of it. I'll let you go and find that at source, that rumour information, and I'll kind of cover it maybe in a future video as and when we get a clearer picture, or as and when those leaks become a little bit more prolific. Okay, the price. Now the R1, when it's released, you can guarantee it's going to be pretty expensive. Now, I remember about a year ago, just over a year ago, making a prediction around the price of the R3 and what that would land as when it came out. And I got pretty close to the mark, and that wasn't through any inside information, but purely looking at what Canon or what tiers, pricing brackets Canon have released previous cameras within. Now, the 1DX Mark III currently retails here in the UK at £7,000 or £6,999 to be precise. And I think the R3 is currently around £5,900 if memory serves me correctly. So there's just over £1,000 difference between those two. Now, when you factor in the supply chain issues that the whole kind of tech industry and most industries actually have been hampered with over the last 2 years, given COVID, and we know the position with the challenges we have in the world right now, it's a bit of an unknown whether obviously delivery times and availability of the body might be hampered when it comes out, as it was with the R3. But in terms of price, we don't know what impact that will have, or those factors, external factors, may have on the price of the R1 at this early point. Obviously, we're almost probably 2 years away, or best part of a year and a half away, before we're likely to have this thing available in shops. With that in mind, I'm going to go conservative. It's still well out of my price range, but I reckon the R1 we'll be looking at around £7,000 to £8,000 here in the UK when that is released. Now, the interesting thing, if you're like me, you just love camera tech and camera bodies, and you're watching this with that in mind, knowing you won't be able to afford the R1 when it's released. As I said, I'm in exactly the same boat, but the really interesting thing is when these big new flagship bodies come out, is it has a trickle-down effect on the used camera market. And when the R1 comes out, I reckon we can expect to see the 1DX Mark III, the 1DX Mark II as well, which is still a formidable camera, the previous iteration of the flagship DSLR. Prices for those used will drop because pros will continue to upgrade from the 1DXs into the R1s, you'd have thought, and the knock-on effect is that the market will be saturated and prices will fall as a result. As we have seen when the R3 came out, some of the early 1DXs, the used prices there fell quite a bit. And some of the pricing, I did a video a couple of weeks ago on my channel about some of the best used Canon cameras right now from a price point and functionality perspective. Some of the like 1DX Mark IIs are a really great price right now. So I think while the R1 will obviously be really expensive, I think the positive impact that has on the rest of us who are buying used, I think that'll be really good and will hopefully allow a whole new level of photographer such as ourselves to maybe shop for a little bit higher end kit. We'll see a lot more information on specs and rumours, no doubt, in the coming weeks and months, so I won't cover any more in this video. However, if you have enjoyed the video or you have any thoughts about the R1, when you think it'll be available, what the price will be, what kind of functionality it's going to pack, feel free to leave a comment below. I do try and read and also reply to every single comment on any of my videos. And if you've enjoyed the video, I'd love you to subscribe to my channel, or at the very least, I will see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.